Hi, this is Pam Worth with the Hello Health Podcast, and today I have Rob Scheer. He's the founder and CEO of Comfort Cases, foster care advocate, CNN hero, author, national speaker, and father. Rob, thank you so much for being on. And
Oh, thank you, Pamela, for having me.
you really have an incredible story. Tell us kind of how this began for you. Obviously, you provide backpacks with new pajamas, books, blankets, and personal care items for children of all
Okay.
ages, obviously, and even the ones that are older. But tell us a little bit about how you kind of got into this and what really is motivating you to continue.
Yeah, well, I think we all need to understand is that in America, we have a system called foster care. It was created to take care of kids. And, the thing is that when care was created, they had the right thing in mind. And I can see that. But the problem is over the years, foster care has become no more than an industry that actually makes money on the backs of children. I know it firsthand because in the 70s, I entered that system carrying a trash bag, the youngest of 10 kids, feeling less than, and all of a sudden having a system that was going to start defining who I was, like they had already started to define my brothers and sisters. See, one child every 2 minutes in the United States enters foster care, 700 a day. They enter because of a decision somebody else actually made. And when these kids enter the system, we immediately think within our side of our head in the community is that these are troubled kids, bad kids. What did they do? Um, and I heard all of that as a young boy. And then when I turned 18, thinking the system was going to be there for me, the only thing the system did is say, guess what? You're 18 years old, you're an adult. So now that you're an adult, you don't get any help from us. And by the way, the foster parents I lived with for all those years kicked me out because their check wasn't coming. So we see that every single day. 22,000 kids in the United States are going to age out of foster care this year, Pamela. And the sad part is 70% will become homeless like me. But for me, I chose the system not to define who I was.
Okay, boy, that's a lot. So tell me kind of how you help not only ones that are in the system, but gravitate or graduate out of the system. What does
Yeah,
that?
well, for me, it wasn't about, anything but about myself. When I graduated high school, homeless, I joined the Navy and but didn't join the Navy to take care of any of your listeners or viewers. I joined the Navy because I was hungry. I wanted a future, and I ended up building it. I became a very successful businessman. I was a banker for 28 years, and you have some feedback, by the way.
I do. Okay. Let me.
You have feedback. You want to try now? Okay. So 28 years, I was actually a banker. And, life was great. 17 and a half years ago, my husband and I decided to build our family. And of course, because I had a connection to foster care, we decided to build it through foster care. Little would we know that within a matter of 3 months, 17 and a half years ago, we didn't get one child, we got four. And so we got a brother and sister. And then 3 months later, we got two brothers. And so for me, it was just about having four kids, putting them in private schools, designer clothes, doing all the things that nobody ever did for me when I was a little boy. But what I realized is that all those material things that I was doing, I wasn't doing what was good for them. See, as parents, our job is to teach our kids two things. Number one, your legacy. See, we have to understand our legacy is what we give and not what we take. But I also need kids to understand, and parents especially, is that empathy, it's not in our DNA. Empathy's taught. It's taught. So for me, I wanted to teach my kids 14 years ago that one person, that if you gather people and stand next to them and that you all push the mountain at the same time, the mountain will move. And by the way, foster care, it's a mountain. It's a mountain. And so we grabbed a backpack, and I knew that when my daughter arrived on that very first night, the thing that made her smile was the brand new pair of pajamas my husband had laid on the bed. And I remember when she walked over and tore the tag off, and she looked at me and she smiled. And she said, "Wow." And I said, "Amaya, why are you smiling?" And she said, Mr. Rob, I've never owned a new pair of pajamas. At that moment, Pamela, I knew that this was not acceptable. And so we got those pajamas, the toiletries, I made sure that these kids had an activity, a book, a stuffed animal. My son Grayson, he was actually 5 when we packed our very first case. He's now 19. And by the way, we've packed 320,000 cases in these 14 years. And Grayson said to me, Daddy, we have to put a blankie in every case. And I was like, Grayson, you know these kids aren't cold. And he was like, I know, Daddy. He was like, but every time we wrap themselves up in their blankie, they know we love them. Wow. But you know, as a dad, that's exactly what we want everyone to know. We want to be loved. We want to know we matter. So that was the birth of Comfort Cases 14 years ago.
I love that. So now tell us about the expansion, how it's run, how people can contribute.
Yeah, yeah. So, 14 years ago, as I said, I was a banker then. And I just wanted to do this little nonprofit for my kids. My husband's a stay-at-home dad raising our kids. And as the years went by, the nonprofit started to grow. And then in 2017, Ellen DeGeneres heard about me and she invited Reese and I onto her couch. And no matter what anybody wants to say about Ellen, she was fantastic to us. And she helped grow our organization to become national. And in 2018, Derek Jeter decided to publish my memoir, Forever Family. And when that came out, I decided to go on a book tour. And after being on a book tour, taking a leave of absence from my company, I walked into a local high school, Pamela. At this point, my husband and I, we had 4 kids. Society was just loving us and we were loving society. And I walked into a school and I told my story. Basically, the story I shared with you today. And a young boy walked up to me and he said, Mr. Scheer, will you sign my book? And I said, of course. I said, what's your name? He said, Alex. I said, Alex, tell me something about yourself. He says, I have nothing to tell. I said, Alex, we all have a story. And he's like, no, my story's like yours. Been in foster care since I was 5, 11 homes, 6 schools, 18, and getting ready to be homeless. I'm going to tell you that hit me so hard. I remember saying to this young boy, it doesn't have to go like that. And he said, no, Mr. Scheer, I've fallen through the cracks of child welfare with a 3.6. Wow. I handed that young man my business card and I actually told him, I want you to call me. We're going to figure this out. And I went home that night. I told Reese and the other kids about meeting him. And one of my kids was like, Dad, invite him to our house for dinner. And sure enough, he called me the next day, that Saturday. I picked him up. 3 months later, I remember him sitting at the kitchen table after another visit. And I said, Alex, how would you like to live with us? And he said, what? I said, well, how about you live with us? He said, are you serious? I said, yeah. My husband and I were the very first couple in the state of Maryland to petition the courts to have a child from foster care live with us without a stipend. I remember that judge looking at me on that day in 2020, and he said, Mr. Scheer, why would you do this? And I said to that judge, as I say to all your listeners and viewers, every child deserves a foundation. Every child deserves to know there's someone there rooting them on. But Pamela, every child in this country truly deserves to feel, what does it feel like when someone loves me unconditionally? I looked at my son. He was crying. He said, Pops, you have changed my life. I said, no, buddy. I said, you changed our lives. I said, I have one regret. The judge said, Mr. Scheer, what is your regret? I said, I didn't get to walk him to kindergarten, but now I get to walk with him for the rest of his life. A year after that, we were in the height of COVID. And I remember my son looking at Reese and I and saying, Dada, Pops, will you adopt me? And I was like, what? I was like, you're not going anywhere. He was like, no, I want the same last name as my sister and brothers and as you and Dada. Pamela, I called my adoption attorney and I adopted Alex. Our kids are now 25, 19, 19, 21, and 17.
Just incredible. What kind of advice do you have for people that are considering helping in foster care? What are the options available? What are different resources that you would recommend? Any
Yeah.
education or things to read or things to consider?
Well, first of all, I want people to understand, and Nelson Mandela said it so clearly, each and every one of us in society, we are all judged by the way we treat our children. Seriously. But we have to also understand the kids in foster care, they don't belong to any of you. They don't belong to me. They belong to us to us. So if you have that spark in your heart that you want to make a difference for a young person, realize not all of us are meant to foster, not all of us are meant to adopt, but we all were put here to serve. And so for me, I've said this quite often, you don't have to have a lot of money to make an impact within your community. And by the way, your community is not your zip code, my friends. Your communities are human race. And so what I say is reach out to us at info@comfortcases.org. Visit our website at comfortcases.org. Find out that if something is donating a book to us makes a difference for a child, or maybe instead of going to that overpriced coffee shop for just 1 month, you donate $10 to us where I can take a trash bag out of a child's hand and give them a comfort case, hope, love, and dignity. So there's always an opportunity to make tomorrow better than you did today.
I love that. Is there anything else that you want to share that I have forgotten to ask about?
No, again, Pamela, I just want to say thank you. I mean, it's people like you that take a platform and truly elevate those that are around you. You don't have to do this podcast. And for all of you that are listening, I want you to understand people who do podcasts. They don't do it because they get this huge money lining their wallets. They do it because they truly care about their community. They truly want to educate everyone that's around them. So, what I say for all of you that are listening, I absolutely enjoy having this conversation. So if you're enjoying listening to it, give Pamela a review because she deserves it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great day, everybody. Bye bye.